Like most lore in Genshin Impact, we have here a deep and intricate story spun of thread that has long since been ripped apart and scattered to the winds. Albedo's tale is one shrouded in secrecy that spans hundreds of years. This enigmatic fellow who whiles away his time studying alchemy in a lab for the Knights of Favonius, who mentors his assistant Sucrose, and at times watches over the ever-explosive Spark Knight, at first glance, perhaps seems somewhat unremarkable, quiet, reserved, melancholic, lost always in one of the two arts he practices. But his fate, the entirety of his existence, indeed even his name, is inextricably tied to one of those arts, alchemy. We set out now to search for the fragments of his tale, to sew together what we can of these fibers and glimpse the peculiar past and present of one Albedo, the Chalk Prince. Most stories start at their beginning. In the case of Albedo, however, things are a lot clearer if we work our way backwards. Currently both Chief Alchemist and Investigation Team Captain for the Knights of Favonius, Albedo spends his time in one of two places, the Knights' headquarters or Dragonspine. But if we're being honest, it's actually Timaeus' alchemy shop or Dragonspine, because pretty certain we've yet to actually see the guy inside the Knights' headquarters outside of his character trailers. When in Dragonspine, he's often in his camp that doubles as a makeshift alchemy lab, either dabbling in experiments or sketches and paintings. At times, alchemy and art overlap with his power to turn his drawings into reality.
Arise, lifeless dust of the universe and that within. Thou art reborn. Do you understand now, Sucrose?
Peculiar notes line his record board, though as the Traveler, we're unable to make heads or tails of them. But what's important is that we helped him. With what, exactly? Well, that's a bit more complicated, isn't it? Before we start breaking down these stories into their base components and analyzing them, there are a lot of recurring themes that you'll want to keep in mind. New life birthed from the old, questioning the laws of the world and its hostility towards Outlanders, but the one of most importance is impurity versus purity, imperfection versus perfection.
Do you know the story of Durin and this mountain? Snow gathers atop this mountain and never melts, which is a most curious phenomenon.
Durin, the venomous dragon that once terrorized Mondstadt, felled by the fangs of Dvalin, and dying in the mountain that would henceforth become Dragonspine. It's Durin's venomous blood that sent Dvalin into a slumber, and that same blood seeped into and became entrenched in the soil of Dragonspine. Despite the negative connotation around the dragon and its blood, this very much served as a catalyst to return some semblance of life to this once devastated region. As they say, life finds a way, even if that way happens to be waiting a whole lot of time for a dragon to come crashing down in the area. Albedo's fascination with the mountain stems from this, of the peculiarities brought upon the land by years and years of exposure to that venom. When we first meet him, he is attempting to sprout a seed he claims is from another world. The seed, and even this quest, are, to a degree, analogous to the 4 steps of the Alchemical Magnum Opus. The first step, the Negrido, or decomposition. Albedo breaks down the problem to its base components by questioning the Traveler and gaining data. The second step, the Albedo, or purification. Yes, his name does derive from the second step. He then attempts to make sense of the data, discarding the bits that are no longer relevant to grasp a more complete hypothesis. It is a step of division. It's clever that the second experiment of the quest is revealed to have left behind some sort of unknown sediment that looks awfully impure. The third step, the Citrinitas, or awakening. Through continued experimentation, data gathering, and sorting, Albedo reaches a conclusion.
After awakening, even creation may be possible.
The fourth step, the Rubedo, or creation. Finally, the seed sprouts and blooms, if only for a fleeting moment, perhaps suggesting Albedo's alchemical knowledge is not as complete as his peers make it out to be. That, combined with his name being the second step, well, the symbolism just writes itself in here. But he yearns to understand and master this, to create his own Magnum Opus. We fast forward a bit now to when Albedo comes into possession of a strange sword, the Festering Desire, And thus, we enter the events of the Chalk Prince and the Dragon, where the traveler is tasked by Albedo to test the sword, as the only one known to be able to handle and purify entities cursed by Durin's venom. It's at the end of this questline that Albedo comments on Durin's purified life force resonating with his own. If there is a connection between the two, then to shed light on Albedo's past, we need to look at one important question. Where did Durin come from? To answer this, we need to rewind the clock many, many years to return to a time of great calamity. Or not, because Albedo just tells us in Shadows Amidst Snowstorms. His master, Rhinedottir, is an alchemist without equal. She hails from Kaeya, and among her greatest achievements are the creation of both Durin and Albedo.
Durin? So that makes you guys brothers?
Known also as Gold, Rhinedottir is a mischievous person, and that's about all we have to go on. We do know that she created the Golden Wolf Lord and the Rift Hounds, both labeled as discarded accidents in an almost whimsical fashion, that to Albedo, she's a cold and strict woman he nonetheless greatly admires, considers his mother, and that the style of alchemy she practices, and by extension the style Albedo practices, is specific to Kaeya and is known as the art of Kaeya. Its focus is the creation of life.
It hails from Kaeya, the art of Kaeya. Soil and chalk, the universe and earth, pure dust and the birth of human life.
Albedo is a synthetic human being. Throughout the events of Shadows Amidst Snowstorms, we're led to believe that an imposter donning Albedo's guise has been stirring up trouble on Dragonspine. Indeed, we do encounter and battle this second Albedo, with the original showing up to help defeat it. The problem? Chronologically, the second Albedo, the Whopper Flower, is actually the third Albedo, and the third Albedo we see soon after is the original Albedo, as in the first Albedo to be created, while the Albedo we all know is the second.
Still a little difficult to understand?
To make sense of this, we need to do a bit of alchemy ourselves and revisit the 4 stages of the Magnum Opus. The original Albedo, the imposter that isn't the Whopper Flower, is Rhinedottir's first failed attempt. She did succeed in creating life, but it wasn't a purified life. She deemed it a failure and fed it to good old Durin, who, is apparently a skeleton dragon, so not quite sure how that one works. The second Albedo, our Albedo, is her success. A fully realized Philosopher's Stone, or so we think. After all, his name isn't Rubedo, and while we call him the second, it's not immediately clear if there are more failed attempts. The third Albedo, the Whopper Flower, is a decoy created by the original. All of that's well and good. A nice, tidy explanation, right? Actually, it is, as well as the suspicion that there may be more failed attempts that are not known about. Thus, we have reached our final question. What does it all mean? The Primordial Human Project, the experiment that bore Albedo and the imposter or imposters. It's a simple enough name, taken at face value. Creation of the first synthetic human. But I believe it to have a double meaning, in that primordial here also refers to biology, relating to the first stage of growth. All of the Albedos are blank slates. Chalk, you could say. Their synthetic nature resulting in a brand new set of genes uninfluenced by the ancestry of humans on Teyvat and untouched by the gods. After all, for a nation like Kaeya, whose entire existence seemed to be one giant flipping of the bird to the gods of Teyvat, by way of technological and scientific advancements, what could be their crowning achievement if not the creation of human life untouched by the gods' influence? Why the Albedo we know is deemed a success while the others aren't? That's difficult to say beyond their apparent difference in behavior. The imposter is violent and envious, and appears unable to shake the desire to be perfect. On the other hand, the Albedo we know understands and accepts that humans are defined by their flaws. All of this may sound far and away from the discussion of alchemy, but let's not forget that the alchemy in discussion is the art of Kaeya, focused on creating life. Emotions and behaviors, if demonstrated negatively, could very well be considered impurities. And it all does circle back to Albedo, the character and the alchemical term. The Albedo is a step of division, but later on reunification takes place. We've two opposites in the forms of the character and the imposter, and I believe at one point they will come together. We could go on and on. We could talk about how Albedo specifically chooses a rose as his example when explaining his story, about how a rose in alchemy symbolizes the bringing together of opposites, and we could speculate that Albedo and the imposter have already assimilated, given the ending of the third act. But let's leave things with this last thought. I do not believe Albedo to be the perfect creation of alchemy, at least not yet. It matters not that Rhinedottir achieved Rubedo with the creation of Albedo. Shrewd as she likely is, I would not put it past her to name him Albedo as a constant reminder to him that his life is no different from anyone else's. Synthetic he may be, but like many a people, he has yet to achieve his personal Rubedo, which, of course, is to find the truth of the world, the very thing she tasked him with as her final command. Perhaps the tasks she set, along with the name she granted, are nothing more than her best wishes for him to live a fulfilled life full of companionship and experience. At the very least, Albedo himself shares this line of thought, even if he has his doubts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video proved informative and interesting. If you enjoyed it, a like helps a lot and a subscribe does even more. So, appreciate it if you consider it. This is Musashi, signing off. Till next time.
The substance from which primal life is molded. No, not at the... Crucible.